with that, Ben can come back and we can talk about the passport. And in the interest of time, so I'm going to let you just dive right in.
Sure.
The board has received a copy of this in our packets, and it's up on the slides as well.
Yes. Most of you are very familiar of the work that the EDC did for the sign bylaw, and this was a child born of that. The passport to doing business in Reading started as, just as it says, a good advice guide for the Economic Development Committee to guide people through processes at Town Hall. In doing this project, which has been an enormous undertaking, a lot of things have come to light. I, being the person who did a lot of the research for it initially, didn't understand a lot of the processes we have, which says something because I had a vested interest in learning about it. So that brought to light, if I am a karate studio coming to town and I teach karate really, really well, I don't understand or want to understand what site plan review is, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. So this was born of helping those people at least hear what those processes are, what each department is, and what they represent, and what they mean to you as a business owner. Tremendous amount of research, staff absolutely excellent. I'd like to personally thank Abby McCabe, who is outstanding in going back and forth with drafts and everything, every single question we all had for her time and time again. The Chamber of Commerce I would also like to thank in sponsoring it. It was really a wonderful partnership between the two entities for new and existing businesses in town. The goal of this book, as I said, is to walk people through each and every single department in a very short and light-hearted way. And I stress light-hearted because this book almost borders on sarcastic at times, but it's meant to. Again, processes to people can be very intimidating, and the Economic Development Committee and our role should not be. So as I go through it, I mean, I don't want to take you page by page because I know that you've reviewed it. If there are specific questions, we did send it to the board as well as the local business owners that I met with for feedback. So edits are appreciated.
So just so visually people who are looking at this is actually folded so that page
Yes.
is the front cover and the back cover.
Exactly. The
right?
front.
And then all the pages in between. Okay.
Exactly. One change we are going to make, I'm sorry, Peter, if we could just go back. We had originally put the hotspot in Reading to show that Reading was a hotspot, if you will. But unfortunately, the feedback we received is it's the only business that is really focused on, and it's actually really not fair. So we are going to replace that photo in the air of fairness to the Welcome to Reading sign. So Peter, if you want to just flip through a couple of these, that would be the inside, and that's the front, and then the contents. And we opened with a passport to doing business in Reading. And the passport is through the feel throughout the entire book. It's almost as if each single department is your destination until you get to your final place. The Economic Development Committee is the entry because, quite frankly, we want people to think of us as the people that want them here and will guide them through the entire process. And as you'll see, we used a photo in saying, how could you say no to these faces? Because really, how could you say no to those faces? So that gives you an idea of the tone of the entire book. Peter was very sweet and stood with plans in front of the Reading Town Hall site to show that, this is where we start. We're going to run and not walk to our permits coordinator, who's Operations Central. And, he will walk you through the permitting process. On the right-hand side, we talk and outline about our development review team, which is a wonderful, wonderful, what's the word I'm looking for, process to go through by having everybody, every head of every department in one room to go through your project with you and what they foresee being needed. We did ask Peter, as the Economic Development Committee, to be included in that development review team so we could see how it works and really be able to speak to businesses about it, and he agreed to that, so that would be wonderful. And our very diligent executives in the background, because we knew we wouldn't get everybody else to sit for it. Destination planning and zoning. I mean, planning and zoning by far is the most confusing portion to everybody. Not every town has a CPDC, Community Planning Development commission, I did have committee B in the left-hand corner. That will be fixed. But you know, we tried to say to them, if you really can't see it in this photo, but that's the members of the CPDC, obviously. But they're holding the easy button, which Peter made me get permission from Staples for using, to say it is easy and it can be easy, and let us help you work through it. So, site plan review. I mean, again, really. It can be very, very daunting. So trying to, in a very simple way, explain to people what it is, why we have it, and the outcome of it. The travel companions to it is also mentioning the Historical Commission, because they can be involved if it is a historical building, and then the Zoning Board of Appeals. But again, the CPDC, that being the travel companions, laying to the whole thought process of it being a journey. And this is just more on, there's a lot on site plan review. The building department. The building department, you know, broad range of, you know, responsibilities, obviously. Don't do anything. The major point throughout this entire book is don't do anything until you engage in with leadership and town staff so that we can explain the process to you. The building inspector very nicely held up the permit for us and tried to smile, and we showed how nice he was. And, you know, just some frequently asked questions that people may have regarding if I do anything on the inside versus the outside. You know, what do I need to do? My personal favorite is this photo on the right-hand side of construction, and everybody taking 12 to 15 people to look at one man in a hole in order for progress to move forward. So I thought that was quite humorous. But again, playing on the fun of it versus the regulation of it all. And saying that, yes, this is going to make me hungry. Let's go to the health department. Moving right along. Health. And here we go. Who knew you needed a milk license? I didn't know we needed a milk license. Megan and I sat down at the hotspot when we first started doing the business surveys 2 years ago. We were sitting with Ace, and she started saying that she was applying for a milk license. And I was dumbfounded. I had no idea. I said, for what? She said, to sell milk products. And I said, who knew? So there you go. You need a milk license. And just giving people a heads up, the church events, charitable events, school events, they all require the health department, because I don't think a lot of people think in those terms. And of course, where's the beef? Because, you know, it's appropriate. Special notes, anything that has to do with licensing for the health department and how they meet. And that brings us to, anybody else need a drink? Let's talk liquor licenses. So destination celebration. Peter actually should get the credit for this page. He really did the text for it because it was a little out of our realm. So he put it. What we did get for feedback and what we are going to include in this is something about our CASA. That would be duly noted to include in here. So we will do that. And then conservation, if you'll notice the little tree hugger, he would be mine. So I will tell you, though, we had Abby in the photo as well, and unfortunately, because the printer had to cut the page, she got cut out, which I know she will not be sad about, but I wanted her included in it. And, you know, a river runs through it, really. How many people know that 40% of Reading is a wetland? I mean, I do now after dealing with conservation on multiple levels, but if you wouldn't if you came here. So really just outlining what a buffer zone is, and, you know, just enough to make them dangerous, if you will, so that when they hear terms, they have a general knowledge of it. And then, you know, the last time, destination show time, you know, asking yourself the questions. Did you meet with the development review team? You know, do you have your checklist from the permits coordinator? Did you reach out to the EDC if you need assistance or guidance? And then I thought we were done, but damn, we have signs. So moving right into signage and the design guidelines for signage. You know, again, being born out of the sign guidelines, that is one of the biggest problems for businesses in town is signage. Understanding what they are allowed to do and what they are not allowed to do. And I feel, we feel, I should say, if we educate them, we try to understand, make them understand what it is we're trying to achieve, the goal of their signage. Obviously, you know, signage is one of the single most important things to a business. But if it can integrate into your area, it will draw more people's attention to it in a positive manner. So the rest of the book just goes through design guidelines and addresses message and lighting and color. And then it gives examples of each different types of signage, which I think will be very, very helpful to people. Peter has actually taken a portion of this and done a one-sheet handout for businesses that have had infractions so that they can see, because as you said, James, people are very visual and they need to see what it is they can do and what they can't do. So I think that this will be very helpful. and then a resources area. But what came out of this, more so than anything else, as it just started to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that was through a meeting with multiple businesses, new businesses, old businesses. You know, there is no question we are on the cusp of so much development in this town with the Mine Project, with Oak Tree, and South Main Street. I mean, it's going to explode. 3 to 5 years, there's not even a question. What I heard from the feedback from a lot of businesses was to challenge ourselves on our processes. Not necessarily negative feedback, but to challenge on how we do our processes, to relook at those processes and to see if in fact they still should be what they are today, or should we be able to improve upon them. We seem to have a lot of layers, some of which are very necessary and some of which could be revisited. So in that respect, I would like to see us all, boards, commissions, committees, challenge each other to do that. We worked very closely with the CPDC on the sign bylaw, and it was excellent. It was so very nice to work together as a team to achieve the goal, because they, I don't think that they understood what the problems of the businesses were to the depth, and they had the knowledge of how to affect that. So that was wonderful. And I'd like to see us all do that. We would like to see us all do that. I don't know if that's done through quarterly meetings. I think that can be worked out in another meeting, not necessarily this one. But I think that many eyes on these businesses is important, truly, for them to be successful. I use Sam's Bistro because, to me, it's our baby for the Economic Development Committee, because Michelle Ferrullo, had a strong hand in bringing that here. And it's the first business, from the EDC standpoint, that we've had from beginning to end. So we've been able to see that in the processes that they've gone through. So that's been enlightening, to say the least, and educational. And I think that if we can put that much of attention on each business that comes to Reading and in the new projects that are going on, and maybe in light of a liaison from the EDC, assigning an official liaison to a business, so that they have a resource that they feel is completely there for them, if you will. And not to take anything away from staff at all. They just simply don't have the capacity. Conservation does conservation, and building does building, and planning does planning. Having one person that they feel like they can identify on their level, I think is very, very important.
James, if I may. Thank you, Sheila. I agree with that point. And I think one concern I have is then the EDC may be looked upon as part of town staff, as opposed to a liaison. And I thought, we just thoughts, doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but also we have a permits coordinator position, which is supposed to do that role. Which I know isn't happening completely because of workloads and whatnot. So I think we need to, Sheila brings up a great point of, we need to look at some of our processes, maybe talk to the design review team and so on and so forth, maybe talk to some of the new businesses, Sam's Bistro, the Goddard School, some of these that have opened recently, and see what changes or what we can do differently. This is great to help someone be prepared, but it can be daunting. If you're just coming into town and you say, wow, I'm gonna have to do all this, and maybe there are things we can improve. So has staff, besides Abby, looked at this, and yourself, Peter, obviously?
Yes.
And maybe, I think it might be a good tool, a way for us to look at ways we can improve.
If I may actually follow up on that, everybody in staff has looked at this. We gave it to the health department, the building department, conservation. Absolutely everybody gave feedback on it, so we thank them all for that. It's almost as if I want to say the opposite. The reason I think we had so much success in getting as much information as we did from businesses is because we were not staff, and it was very clear we were not staff. Because people, there's no question, they're very intimidated in people that can make them go forward in the process. Again, not any reflection on anybody who's done anything to that effect, but it's like going to your teacher. They score you, and they hold that in your hands, and the EDC doesn't. We're the ones that are there to say, all right, let's talk about how we can do this, and really work with both sides, if I may.
Right.
So the permits coordinator, I know that role is what it is, but I view this role as being different.
Ben?
Yeah, Sheila and Pete, I appreciate the work done in the passport. I've got
lots of suggestions and edits that are kind of handwritten on the thing, so I'll be getting in touch so we can go through it. I think one idea I'd like to suggest is that once we have a final product that everybody is comfortable with, I think it would be a good opportunity, perhaps in the fall after the street fair, we could sit down with the the staff directors and the representatives, if not all the members of the boards, committees, and commissions that are affected by this. I think it would be appropriate for us as a board to meet with them sort of in total to talk a bit about how we could actually get everybody on the same page with respect to the development of new business in the in the community. And the rules are a little bit flexible in terms of how big your project is and how much is involved. But sometimes you have to remind people that not everything's 25-acre development. It's we're talking one restaurant here, and we want to make it as easy as possible for people to get stuff open. And I think sometimes it's important for the other boards who are composed of our neighbors, who we appoint, just to share our perspective with them as to how quickly or at what sort of level we'd like to see things go through, and that might be sort of helpful for them in terms of getting maybe a different perspective on some of the issues that that come before them, because a number of these bodies like ZBA and Conservation Commission, once we appoint these folks, they're kind of on their own. They're going to do what they're going to do, and they have legal responsibility to to do that. And but I think from time to time it's helpful for them to understand kind of where the board's coming from. And I know we all try hard in terms of our liaison appointments, but I think maybe just getting everybody together to discuss some of these issues would would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's what helped us spur the fall session with the boards, committees, and commissions. Slated to do that, September, October?
Usually do it in September, late September, early October. One of the things that we used to do, and we actually stopped doing it because the board, committee, and commission chairs, I think we're having a hard time scheduling it, it was quarterly. We had a meeting with the department head of community services, which is the primary person, and the chair of all of the boards, committees, and commissions that are involved in development. So it was ZBA, Conservation, CPDC, Historical Commission. We didn't have the Economic Development Committee at the time. Health. And just to sit around and discuss sort of what was going on, what issues they were dealing with, what problems they had, how things were going. So, Ben, your suggestion is, sort of a step beyond that, which is to perhaps involve more.
Yeah, I'm not saying do this quarterly. I'm
no,
saying like once every couple of years we do it,
but I think one of the outgrowths of that could be that group does meet quarterly, not that whole group, but that kind of smaller subset, because I found it very interesting to hear what any of them knew or didn't know about what was going on with each other and what kind of issues they were dealing with and so forth. And I think they did too, but I think it was an issue of just kind of the time commitment and scheduling. So I've got that down as an action item for the fall.
Yeah, and I also wonder, Pete, the DRT, which is the Development Review Team, if the chairs of CPDC or EDC, shouldn't be part of that as well.
Yeah, I certainly have no objection to that. I think scheduling, right now we're scheduling about 12 people into that, and, so
right.
Subject to scheduling, I don't think that's a problem. We do it as a daytime meeting. I think if to the extent that one involves, the sort of nighttime government, that becomes somewhat difficult sometimes for people to attend those, but, we can certainly consider that.
Yeah, just thinking through. Thank you, Sheila, this is excellent.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank
Good
you.
job.
Well, I'll let somebody else speak, if you're all done
Thank
with me.
Are you all done with us?
I am all done with you. That's great.
Thank you. And I know a lot of effort goes into that. And I want to thank the members of EDC who are here and your tireless efforts. So thank you. With that,